Hi there, I am Ismail from Pearl Lemon, and in this lesson, I'm going to show you how to diagnose one of the most misunderstood situations in SEO. A website loses traffic, and everyone immediately assumes something is broken. Maybe Google penalized the site, maybe the rankings dropped, maybe SEO simply stopped working. But very often, none of that is true. The drop is simply seasonal, meaning it happens every year at the same time, and we can verify that directly using Google's own data. Now, the first thing you need to do is to open your Google Search Console and come down to the performance area of it. This report shows real organic traffic from Google Search. Then we want to turn on our clicks and our impressions. Now we'll focus on mainly clicks firstly because it represents actual visitors. Although not every click eventually becomes traffic for one reason or the other, but that's another story for another day. Now, the next thing you want to do is that we are seeing the traffic for the last 3 months here. You understand? And we are seeing different points in which this traffic dropped. So sometime in November, the traffic dropped. Sometime, okay, so again in November, there have been dips in November, then December. But generally, you can see that on average, the statistics show lower traffic in November and December. And then in January, it starts picking up and going to peaks that were never experienced before. So you can see that the traffic is tending upwards in towards the end of February, in towards the end of January, towards the beginning of February, as compared to November and December. Now, the most important step of this lesson is to come to more right here, and then you go to compare. Then under your comparison options, you simply select 3 months year over year. And now you can see different statistics depending on the time of the year. And the dotted lines represent the last 3 months of last year, with the that's November, December, January of last year compared to November, December, January that just passed, and February, sorry. So now, instead of comparing recent months to the months before them, we are comparing this period, the last 3 months, to the same time period last year. And now we are going to look at how much the traffic has in common with each other in terms of where they dipped. And you can see that there isn't much difference this year between November 21 and November 24th. There were dips. The dip for last year happened November 25, but you can see the traffic was consistently going down between the November 21st and right here in the lowest low of that period, that's between December 23rd and December 25th, you can see, and December 27th, sorry, you can see that it's a common thing for both years. So this is not just a drop in traffic, it's also seasonality. Seasonality means search demand changes throughout the year. People search for certain services only at certain times. For example, travel websites drop after holiday periods. Schools spike right before admissions. Tax services spike during tax season. Event venues drop after peak wedding months, like these past 3 months that we are talking about. Google didn't stop ranking you, fewer people are searching. Now, to further confirm our theory, we can also use impressions. And right here, you can see that the impressions are even more identical than the clicks. And from some perspective, the impressions are even more educative in this segment because the click culture from impressions could be different. There are more factors tied to clicking in the sense that, you know, the quality of the CTA improved optimization of the meta title and the meta description can lead to a higher click-through rate last year as opposed to this year. But as you can see here, the impression data, that's the amount of people looking at each of these pages, as each season goes through, as each day of the month compared to the last year's own goes on, you can see that it's nearly identical. November 30th, last year and this year, there were drops. The same thing for December 25th, Christmas Day. So, in terms of the people that have seen the page, you can see that there have been drops in the same period. If impressions dropped along with clicks, that means demand decreased. Google is simply showing your website less because fewer people are searching for that topic. If rankings were the problem, impressions would often stay similar while clicks drop. You understand? So, if your impressions, basically what we are saying is that if your impressions did not change year on year, but only your clicks dropped, that means you lost rankings. But now we have seen evidence that impressions dropped year over year and clicks dropped at the same time year on year. And there's another additional clarification that needs to be made here. Just because this year's total number of impressions and clicks are better than last year's own does not mean that there weren't relative drops year on year. What I'm saying is that your site can improve in terms of SEO in the sense that in the same period this year, your site had so and so impressions. In the same video next year, it had times 10 the same impressions. But the key question that we are asking here is that the times 10 impression this year that you had, is it lower compared to how it was like 1 month ago or 2 months ago? Then the lower impressions that you had last year, was it lower than what it was 3 months before that day last year? So basically what we are looking for here is dips in impressions and clicks around the same time as it happened last year. The actual numbers might be more. You could have more numbers in a peak period last year than you had in a low period this year. You understand? So your low period this year could be better than your peak period last year. But the point is that, was there decline? Was there reduction at the same time? So, lastly, before changing your website, rewriting pages, or blaming SEO, always check seasonality first. Sometimes the smartest SEO decision is understanding that nothing is actually wrong. And on that wonderful note, that is the end of this video. If you found this useful, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you so much, and see you next time. Goodbye.